Leap of Faith podcast fans. Welcome to this week's episode with yours truly, as always, Randy Silver. This week, we're continuing our January series of 2022 goal setting, emotional intelligence, and how you can improve yourself. And we're going to talk about careers. We're going to talk about how you can prepare yourself for interviews and all types of interviews, prepare yourself with education to get into interviews. We're going to talk about everything in career advancement to make sure that you are the best yourself. Whatever those goals we talked about the past couple of weeks are, you're prepared to make those goals excel for you in 2022 and however you can make that happen. This week, we have a guest on. It's not just me, so you're not going to be bored of my voice anymore. We're getting a second voice in here. His name is Mark Herschberg. Mark, say hi to the fans for us.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Awesome. We appreciate to have you. Mark is the author of the Career Toolkit, so he's perfect for it. We're going to have a great banter. As you guys know, I am a sales manager, and I have very good experience to share with you what we look for, and Mark will be able to share from his expertise and what he sees and how he can help enable your success as well. So again, Leap of Faith fans, thank you so much for tuning in as you do every week. If you don't know how to find us, how do you find us? Of course, it's always on Apple, on Spotify, on all the pod sites, on YouTube, at Leap of Faith Pod, at Randy Silver 09. So please go ahead and reach out, give us ideas for topics. Please like and subscribe. It means so much to us. Thank you so much. And obviously all the channels is TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all of it. Thank you so much for interacting. And I would love to just say I had one thing I want to share with you before we bring Mark back in. The episode that was about 2022 goal setting, someone on YouTube reached out to me and said, "Hey, Randy, I've never heard of you before, never saw you. I just typed in 2022 goal setting, found your video, watched it, and it was amazing. It really helped me set myself up to start 22 strong. I have subscribed to your channel on YouTube. I'm going to follow you moving forward. It meant a lot to what you did, and it was very actionable and easy. Thank you so much." And stuff like that, again, thank you so much for putting it out there. It helps me, one, continue the great content for you because I know what's working, and two, it helps grow the brand of Leap of Faith to help. If we can change one person's life out there, that's the ultimate goal, and that's what we want to do. And today, that's what we're going to do with Mark. So we're going to bring Mark back in here and say, Mark, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to sharing some tips with your audience to set them on the path for their 2022 goals.
Awesome. I'm super excited for that too. So just to give everyone a high level of who you are, can you kind of give us a brief 1-2 minute overview of what you've done and why people are going to be able to listen to you today and understand what you're talking about?
Sure. I have this very interesting dual career. I came out of MIT in the 90s and started as a software engineer. I realized that I wanted to become a CTO, a chief technology officer. And so I set myself to getting on that path, realizing that to become a CTO, it wasn't just about being the best engineer, but there were all these other skills: leadership, hiring, negotiating, team building, all these skills no one ever taught them to me in school. So I had to develop them in myself. And in doing so, I realized they're not just skills for executives. They are skills that help all of us, from the most junior person to the most senior person on the team. So I started training up my team. And as I was doing so, MIT had gotten feedback from companies they survey, and the company said, these are the skills we want to see in people we hire. Not just MIT students, not even just college students, but everyone. We want to see these skills, and we can't find it because no one is teaching them. So I then helped MIT create what's known as the Career Success Accelerator. I've been teaching there for the past 20 years. And so now, in addition to my career as a CTO of tech startups, I've also been educating at MIT. I now have the book, The Career Toolkit, Essential Skills for Success That No One Taught You, speaking and other related activities to that side of my dual career.
Love that. And obviously, if you guys don't know, MIT is one of the top schools in the nation. Very brainiac people go there. So we know that Mark is very smart and be able to teach there and have a whole program there. So I think that's a great place to dive in. Is you talked about some of the skills that employers are looking for to hire. What are some of those top skills that you aren't taught in school that people want to hire for and look for?
There are 10 skills that come from surveys at MIT and elsewhere, which correspond to the 10 chapters in the book. They are creating a career plan. Even companies want to make sure you have a clear sense of where you want to go. Working effectively, things like managing your manager, understanding corporate culture. interviewing, and it's just as important to know how to interview on the hiring side
Mhm.
as on the candidate side, and knowing one helps you with the other. Then you have leadership and management skills. So I break them down separately: leadership, and then the people side of management and process side of management. And then the last section has communications, networking, negotiating, and ethics. And those are the 10 distinct types of skills that companies want to see in people that they hire.
I love that. So let's kind of just dive into the interviewing. I brought that up in the intro. We can go to it. No, personally, right now, I'm actually interviewing to hire 5, 6 people for the company I work for, Oyster, as a sales manager. So please, if you are interested, sales rep, reach out to me. And I actually interviewed 3 people last week, and some of the stuff that I dealt with was one person came in with only being at a company for 1 year or less. It's 3 straight companies, so over 3 years, 3 different companies. And as an interviewer, that's a red flag to me because they bounced around. So the questions I go into with that, and you should be prepared for, is how and why did that happen? Why is there not consistency? That's a red flag to someone who's trying to hire. Because if I hire you and then you leave within 6 to 12 months, then I'm back in the same position. So why am I going to put my effort and time into you when that's what you're consistently showing on your record? And number 2 was someone was a CEO of a company, and then they sold their part of the company and wanted to come back to just be a normal sales rep. So the red flag there to me is, okay, you were doing this overarching part of the company, you're managing many different teams. Now you want to be individual contributor as just a sales rep on a team. Are you going to get bored of that role? What's the reason for that? Why do you not want to continue to run that company? So there's red flags that come with you trying to take a step down in your career. But again, sometimes you go 2 steps down, 3 steps forward. And then the third person, then we'll bring Mark back in to give his insight as well. What he sees was she had been at the company 3 or 4 years, kind of had everything, but she brought up in her conversation multiple times that she would look at what's best for her. And she couldn't commit to be at a company, aka my company, Oyster, for more than a year or two, because if another position came up that was a better, say, gave her better equity, gave her a better opportunity, gave her a better role, she would happily leave where she was at to go pursue her own interest. And again, with the same first person, I preach the transparency, but why am I going to then hire you, train you up where you potentially could leave in 6 to 12 months? I'm back in the same position. So Mark, again, 3 scenarios there. I'm sure you've seen scenarios. Can you provide some insight to what you think about that? And also in general, what you see people should do in their interviews?
I think you assess them correctly in all cases. We have to remember, as candidates, we are selling ourselves. You
Mm-hmm.
have to think like a salesperson. You have to ask yourself, what does your customer want? Now, your customer is the company, the hiring manager, yourself in this case, and you want someone who can reliably sell for a long period of time. To your point in the first case, you said, look, I have to invest all this time and effort in finding someone and then training you up. We all know salespeople don't start selling day one.
Yeah.
And depending on the product, depending on their skill set, it could even be months of effort before they really start getting into it. And you're going to invest all that time. There's a cost. When someone shows up day one, they actually cost the company money because someone who was productive stops what she's doing to train up someone to become productive.
Mm-hmm.
That could even last far more than a day, right? Weeks or months. So how does a company be convinced this is a long-term investment? That means they believe you're going to be able to do the job, maybe not day one or week one, but at some point, and will be there long enough to compensate for that initial cost. In that first case, the signal is that this person shows that he moves around a lot. Now, there may be reasons. It may be, I work at tech startups and I've done some that are early stage. I've done some where it's a consulting job. I say, look, I'm only supposed to be there for 6 months. That was the understanding. Go,
Yeah.
okay, I get. So just be prepared, as you said, to answer that question. Think of questions that you get like public speaking.
Yep.
When you have to do a speech, what do? Well, you practice the speech. You don't memorize it word for word, but you know what you're going to say. You know what these questions are, whether it's what's your weakness or I noticed you moved around a lot, and you want to be prepared in how to answer that. So that's case one.
Yeah, and I would say to compound that, role play yourself. Ask your family member, your friend, hey, can you sit down and interview me, look at my resume and ask questions based off what you see? So then you'll get someone that will practice what you are about to go through. And you're like, oh, I'm already prepared for that, as Mark just said. So that's a great point.
100%. Everything that you do for public speaking, what do? You practice. You might practice in front of a mirror. You might practice in front of other people, get that feedback. That applies to interviewing as well. So use the techniques you use for public speaking for interviewing. Now, the second person, the CEO who's dropping back, again, that would be a red flag to me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to understand why. So you need a good story if you're in this position. If there's some type of change, some non-common path, going from one sales role to another, okay, that happens all the time. Going from even a bigger company to a smaller company, that's pretty common. Maybe you say, oh, it got too big for me. I really like the small companies. I'll believe that. But when it's something very different, in this case, going from CEO to a salesperson, if you are a product manager going to salesperson, something that's not a traditional path to this role, I'm going to want to know why.
Yep.
And you need to have a good story that sells that.
Yeah. And again, a red flag doesn't mean you're taken out of the interview process. And at that moment you tell me that I'm not going to listen to you the rest of the time. It just means it's something that perks my ears up. I need to dive deeper into to make sure, as Mark just said, there's a story behind it. And does that story make sense? And that's probably where also as well, at that point, I'll go do a reference check. Can I speak to your co-founder? Can I speak to your former manager and then get their side and get their transparent feedback to make sure things add up?
And especially for this role, if it was, say, an accountant or an engineer, okay, I expect they're going to give me the answer. But a salesperson, your whole job is selling, and that includes overcoming objections. So right here, when you're going for a sales role in particular, and you have these potential objections, these red flags, the objection is just a reason not to buy in sales parlance. So it's, hey, you look good, except there's this one thing concerning me. That's the objection. As a salesperson, you better be able to overcome it. And so I'd even have a higher bar for people for this particular role because this is what they do.
Yeah, that's a good point. You better be able to sell yourself in the interview, or if not, you can't sell our product.
Now, the third role, the third person, I'm a little split on. On the one hand, okay, that was a little blunt and honest, saying, well, look, I'll be here, up until I can find something better somewhere else. And certainly saying that, yeah, it's, saying like, well, I'm not totally committed. On the other hand, realistically, the company implicitly says the same thing. Hey, we're going to keep you here, not until we can find someone better. I'm not going to say, oh, I think someone can sell 10% more than you or replace you. But if the company says, hey, you know what, we had a bad quarter, we have to lay some people off, well, you're going to get laid off. The company might say, hey, I hope you'll be here for 4 years. And I take every job, the non-contract ones, thinking I'll be there for many years, but I do a lot of startups. Never works out that way. So realistically, she's saying what both sides are thinking. However, and if this was, again, like an engineer, I'd say, okay, well, engineers, they're a little blunt, but a salesperson, you don't bring up what is a potential objection to the sale. And so in a salesperson, that is a just unacceptable answer. In other roles, I might be willing to forgive it, but not a salesperson.
Yeah. And again, at that point, that's where I would want to go check a reference check and say, like, hey, has she said this to you before? But the fact that she had been in her company for 3 years, she was saying one thing, but her actions in her real life were different. So it was very unique. Now, then, to give you guys a different perspective, what does it look like from the manager side? Like, what we want to look out for you is, again, we're not going to get a good read on you in one interview. We do our best, but we want to see, one, are you a team player? Are you going to fit into the team mold? For me as a hiring manager, I'm not going to disrupt the team culture I have. I'm looking for someone who could come in and is going to be friends with everybody, who's going to be a contributor to the team. If someone's going to come in and maybe they're a rock star in proven sales, but they're going to bring down team morale and team chemistry, then I would much rather have a power line player and build them up than someone who's going to create more headaches for me as a manager, because then I have to deal with that much more. So you need to be a team player and you need to be a team chemistry achiever. And two, the other thing I look for is, what do you bring to the team that my team doesn't already have? And you're not going to know that as the interviewee, but as the interviewer, I know what my team has. Maybe I'm lacking someone who doesn't have analytical skills. Maybe I'm lacking someone who's really not good at public speaking. Maybe I'm lacking someone who's just not a high motivator and loves the energy and will just make everybody talk in team meetings. And if you can show that type of stuff, whatever I'm missing, then I'm going to want to bring you on the team, because you're going to help, not one, just up level the whole team and make them better. Two, you're going to make me look good as a manager when you are high achieving and the team's change, and they're gonna be like, oh, Randy, that was a great hire, like, good job, you're proving yourself. So it makes me look good. Mark, I'll let you interject here. Anything that you think off of that, and anything to add?
I want to know what you're looking for is unique to you. It's not totally uncommon. In fact, I often look for team players because the nature of the teams that I build, I hire lots of engineers and product people and data scientists, and we have to work as a team. There are other organizations, other cultures where it is more individualistic, particularly in sales, where they might say, I don't care if you're a jerk. If you can sell, we're just going to stick you in your cubicle, your office, whatever. Go sell. Try not to talk to too many other people. But hey, as long as you're selling and not violating any HR issues, I'm fine with that. In fact, there are some cultures where I say, even if you do violate HR, we don't have a problem with it, which is unfortunate. But so different companies have these different cultural norms, and these are all part of a job description that is not listed. I talk about this in the book. Now, I think companies need to be more explicit about it, at least internally, if not externally. And there's reasons why you might be externally explicit or not in a particular role. But companies need to be clear what it is they're looking for, not just in X years of experience or knowledge of why, but these other things like being a good team player. What does that mean? How do you measure it? How do you rate it? I would also note that it is acceptable for you as a candidate to ask about this. In fact, a question that someone might ask is, what would make someone an ideal candidate for this role? And if I asked you that, you might come back and talk about, well, I'm looking for someone who's a good team player.
Yep.
So, okay, what does that mean? Oh, and someone who brings something to the table that you don't already have. My follow-up would be, well, maybe you can tell me a little about your team. What do you think you have? Anything explicitly you're thinking that you don't have that you'd like to see? Because then you might discover, oh, wait, I've got one of those things you're looking for. Let me tell you about it. I wasn't going to before, but now I know you're looking for it. So it's okay as a candidate to ask, hey, tell me a little more about what you're looking for so I can sell into it. And again, this goes sales 101. Ask your customer what she needs and then direct your answers to meet those needs.
Yeah, I think you made a great point there. I want you to kind of dive deeper. Is when you're interviewing for a company, it's just not you getting interviewed, you're interviewing the company as well. You want to find out from the hiring managers, what is it like to be here? Am I going to be a good fit? Like, is this something that I want to invest my time into as well? So can you kind of compound on, like, as an interviewee, how do you feel comfortable asking some of those deeper questions when you're like, oh, I don't want them to think I'm overstepping my boundaries, finding out more about them?
Yeah, now this is something that scares a lot of younger
Yeah.
interviewers, but a good company, a good hiring manager understands this. And really, we want to make sure this is a fit for you. One of the mistakes I made, one of my very first hires, she turned out not to be a good fit. She was a wonderful engineer. When I hired her, she came out of a bunch of big banks. I mentioned I do tech startup companies. So she was used to a very big bank, very process driven, lots of paperwork, lots of regulations. And this is when agile engineering, it's a new type of engineering that's very low paperwork, low process, let's just get things done, was just starting out. And so we were trying out this company and she was not comfortable with it. She said, you're supposed to tell me exactly what to do, and then I do it, and I come to you and ask what's next. And with the agile process, the whole thing is I say to the team, what do you think we should do? Okay, this makes sense. Here's the goals. Is this the way to meet it? She wasn't comfortable in that. And I didn't know enough about hiring back then to understand this was an issue, that cultural fit. Now that I do, I definitely want to look for that. And if someone said, hey, look, I really like being given very clear directions. I always like knowing what I'm doing. I don't want to have to color outside the lines. Just tell me explicitly what you want. I will do it. I will come back to you and ask what's next. That's not going to work for me and my team. This isn't a fit. I don't want to hire you. And it's nothing personal. That woman I mentioned, great engineer. I think she'd be great at other companies, just not the ones I build. So we as hiring managers do care about that. And if we don't see it's a fit, you're not going to be happy. We're not going to be happy. Let's not go down this path. So that's not a problem. It's not bad to say this isn't a fit. So you can ask these questions about culture, about management style, even questions like, what's the work level here? Are most people in at 9 o'clock, out at 5? Do people tend to work 40 hours, 50 hours a week? What's it like? It's acceptable to ask that.
Yeah. And especially for me as a hiring manager, it shows to me that you're invested in the company when you're asking those types of questions. It's not just a job. Oh, I can do the job. I want to do sales, engineering, marketing, whatever. No, you want to find out about the company and make sure you're there. So I actually really value when people come prepared with questions, because then I know that they're doing their homework on their side versus like, I'm just trying to get a new job. To take it to the next level is what not to do during an interview personally for me. And this could obviously change based on the company, the hiring manager. What I expect from an interviewee, and this might be a little bit old-fashioned, is at least put a collar shirt on or some type of nice dress wear, especially now the fact that like nobody's in offices, we're not really doing in-person interviews, everything's virtually. I think it just shows a little bit more presentableness, especially in the first interview. If it's maybe at the final and they say, hey, Randy, you know what? Don't worry about dress shirt. Maybe just put on like a crew neck or something. Totally fine. But when you're meeting someone for the first time interview process, it's going to make a significant impression how you look in that little Zoom box. Like right now I would never wear a friend of the pod interview. Of course, I hope you never would, but that first impression you make in those 3 to 5 minutes is going to go a long way. So if you're looking a little bit more ragged in that first 3 minutes, they're going to already be thinking about that the rest of the interview process. So you want to make yourself look presentable in that first interview, especially if it's over Zoom, because they don't get to see everything. Now, if you're not wearing pants below, you're wearing shorts, fair enough, but they can't see that. So I think you need to look very presentable there. And two, what I also love to see is people taking notes. And again, it's just an image thing that you're engaged in the interview process. You're engaged in the conversation. You're taking notes on what I'm saying about the business, about the team, about whatever goals that we're trying to set, what we're looking for. And it'll show that, hey, this person's invested here. And then you're able to say, hey, let me go back to my notes really quick. I have a question based off of this. So you're able to then have an active, engaged conversation. And again, you're learning there. And the rule number 3 that I love to see, and this is probably more of a sales thing than other, but like at the end of the interview, always ask this question. Is there anything that I haven't spoken of today or any concerns that you have that you want to move forward with the process? So let me say a different way. Now, we're at the end of the interview. Is there any other outstanding questions you have or any concerns you have with me not moving forward with this process? That gives you the opportunity as the interviewee to hear from me as the interviewer, the manager, whoever. You know what? You actually didn't answer this question well. I'm a little concerned. I wanted to hear something about this, but you didn't say it. Great. We still have 3 minutes left. Let me answer that question for you. Let me make sure I clear that up for you. So now I'm not leaving the interview with these questions in my head and comparing to other people. You've now asked a question that helps me, one, dive deeper, and two, it gives me the concrete information that I felt a little concerned about, and you've already had the chance to object it versus you never got that chance and I don't move you forward. You never can talk about that. So I think those are 3 key things to make sure you do an interview. Mark, let's bring you back in. Comments, questions, concerns, other things I may have missed.
Yeah, that third point is a great one. And this is another great sales technique. When you are a salesperson selling, you say, are there any things I haven't addressed, any concerns, any issues or questions in your mind? Because I want to make sure you, the customer, feel happy to move to the next level. And so we can learn from sales as interviewees, because again, we're selling ourselves. So if you have friends who do sales, ask them what are some sales techniques and think about how you can translate it to interviewing. Read articles, listen to podcasts about sales. All of us sell at some point. Now, to what you were saying about clothing, 100%. I would rather be the person in a suit in a room full of t-shirts than the person in a t-shirt in a room full of suits.
And if you can't see Mark right now, he's wearing a collared shirt. I'm wearing a jacket, so bravo.
I wear French cuff shirts all the time. It's just, that's my personal style. I certainly will expect other people wear French cuff shirts. In fact, even at my tech startups, where everyone wears a t-shirt, and I totally could, I still like to dress up. That's just my personal preference. Although interestingly, when I go out and do tech recruiting at night, I might intentionally dress down, because if I show up in a French cuff shirt into a tech event with people who don't know me, they're going to think I'm just some suit. They're going to think this guy doesn't know tech. I don't want to
Yeah.
talk to him.
The VC just walked in.
Yeah, because how we dress does convey something.
Yep.
But it's always better to overdress. When in doubt, if you do show up in a button-down shirt and everyone's wearing t-shirts, they'll think, okay, you just want to put a good foot forward, or maybe you were just being safe. No
Yeah.
problem. We're not holding that against you. But if you show up in that t-shirt and everyone is dressed up, they're going to think you didn't bother. You didn't make that effort.
Yeah. You always can dress up and people will be okay with it. You can never dress down and be like, oh, and then have people be okay with it. I agree with that.
One thing you can do, it's a little harder these days during COVID, but if you look at the company website, you look at photos, oh, here's a celebration we did, look at how people are dressed, look at the Twitter feed or Instagram of the company, see how people are dressed in the office, and that's going to give you some idea. And at least match it, ideally even be just half a step above it. If they're in t-shirts, wear at least a collared shirt, if not a button down. If they're in polo shirts, wear that button down. So always go at least that level or a step above.
Love that. Love that. That's a great point. I didn't actually think about that. You could look at their website, social media. So I like that. I'm gonna take that in my arsenal. Thank you so much. Was
A
there one more
little
point?
harder during COVID.
Yeah. Was there one more point there? Was that a good tie off on your side?
I think that's all I remember from what you had
Yeah.
brought up. I think you had a third, but I can't recall what it was.
Yeah. Okay. So then, with all that said, now the take it from the last part is like you yourself as the employee. When I'm as a employer manager, I personally like to do reference checks and call at least one person when it gets deep in the process. A lot of people nowadays actually don't do that. You can find out a lot of good information on LinkedIn, social media. So it's not as important. But I like to, if I'm going to bring someone into my life, bring someone to my team, bring someone to our company, I want to get a second check on you because, again, you could be a great salesperson, but people aren't going to usually lie. And I'll give you an example. When I was working at Cisco, I had a very disgruntled employee. I was the best manager could be to him, but he did not want to work. He did not put effort in, and he was a cancer to the team. And it pains me to say that because that's really hard as a manager to have that on the team and how you manage that. And he ended up leaving the company on his own terms after a lengthy process. When we get into it, fast forward 3 months, and he was applying for a new role, and I got a reference check. Someone reached out to me. So the employee manager at the new company he was trying to interview at reached out to me and said, hey, this person put you down as a reference. Can I speak to you? Side note, I have no idea why he put me as a reference. It was not a good decision on his part to do that. However, it ended up being a good decision for him because, you know, I like to see people achieve in their life. I like to see people have opportunities to be successful, have a second chance. And people go two ways. One, if you're a disgruntled employee and you leave on bad terms, people will tell the hiring manager who the reference check, do not interview this person, do not hire this person. This person's a cancer to the team, will not do the job. I laid it out a bit differently. I said, when this person is motivated and they see the goals and they think they're achievable, this person will be successful. When this person feels demotivated, when this person feels not supported, when this person feels lack of work ethic, it will create distraction on the team and it will be a major hassle for you to deal with. So you can get both of them, and depending how you manage, it could go both ways. But I'm telling you right now, I saw both of those. So I gave a positive and negative. This person ended up getting hired by that company, only lasted 6 months. And after 6 months, which I thought was also crazy, the interview manager who reached out to me called me back and was like, hey, Randy, just letting you know this happened. And I just want to say thank you very much for the transparent feedback you provided. You were exactly right. Everything happened as you said it would. Next time, I think you should just be a little bit more serious and concrete and tell me the negatives harder because shouldn't have had to dealt with that. I never should have hired him. So I thought that was interesting that he had the wherewithal to actually call me back and say, I would appreciate you being a little bit more strict in the way that you give the information versus being a little friendly. I was like, okay, whatever, fair enough. But again, what's the whole point of that? And we'll bring Mark back in here is the impressions you make on people are going to really affect how people are going to obviously talk about you. So when you're trying to go for interviews and get hired by new companies, make sure one, those references know you're going to be a reference and ask them to be a reference. So that way they're prepared for it, which I was not prepared and I got caught off the guard. And two, is that reference a good person to make the reference and will they give you a good shout out? So with that being said, Mark, love for you to get your thoughts here and any more advice to provide.
Yeah, great points. First, always let your references know. I hate when companies say, oh, and provide references right from day one. And I always say, look, here are the references. Don't call them till I call them first. Even people who I know have been references for me in the past, and they will say yes. I just always like to make sure they have a heads up. Now,
Great.
we all know I do check all references, and I have actually dinged people because they lied about university work, like they didn't actually get the degree, or some other reason I find in the reference check where they lied about something. I'm pretty thorough. Also, we know the references you give, those are positive people for the most part. You have one of the rare exceptions. I have seen that once or twice. But most of us know, okay, who am I going to ask? Was it that CEO I didn't really get along with? Or is it the CEO who loves me? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm going to give you that one. So we know there's a bias in the references.
Can I ask you a follow-up question before you continue
Yeah.
on? So you just mentioned though that you saw people lied about the degrees and whatnot. Do you automatically, if someone lies on a resume, discontinue them from any of your process, or is it just something, okay, you're going to go below someone else, you better be better in somewhere else areas, because that's a pretty big thing to do.
For me, integrity is one of
Yeah.
the objective things. It's binary. If you don't have it, you don't qualify. So that dings them, that gets them out of the whole process for me.
Got it. Sorry. So please, that makes sense to me. I agree with that. Please continue.
And it's fine if you were to say something like, look, hey, I was there for 4 years. I was 2 classes short of this degree. Okay, tell me that. And yeah, I get it. And I don't particularly care if you have the piece of paper. You basically have a college education. I'm fine with that. But if you tell me I have this degree and you don't, you either didn't attend or you didn't graduate, that's a problem for me. So now we know that with your references, you're giving us positive references. Many of us, especially as you get more senior in your jobs, not for maybe some 24-year-old on his second job out of school, but directors and VPs, I'm going to be using my back channels to get other references on you because the world is pretty small. If you're in the New York tech world, I probably know some people in common who have worked with you. I can get to them, right? At worst, it's 2 hops. I'll ask someone I'm very close with who can get to someone who worked with you, and I'm going to find out. So recognize we're going to get the information. And so it's always important that you care about your reputation management. Now, you brought up a really interesting point about how you're perceived. One thing I always advise people, make sure when you leave a job, you leave it well.
Yep.
Now, I do a little bit of stand-up comedy. One of the things they teach you in stand-up comedy, you need a strong opening joke and a strong closing joke. Because when you show up, that's your first impression. You get up on stage and going, okay, new comedian, don't want to listen to this guy. Oh, that joke was lame. They're going to start tuning you out. You got that good, strong joke. You can put some weaker material in the middle. And then what happens? You got to leave them on that high note. There's a whole Seinfeld episode about this. You need that strong closing joke. When you leave a company, that is a final impression they have of you. Whether you quit or get fired or laid off, this is how they remember you. I had one person, she worked for me. She was a great engineer. And for political reasons, because of some things that were happening in the company, she wanted to leave. She let me know because my employees all know they can talk to me when they're willing to leave, and I will help them. If I can't change their mind, I will support them. I said to her, you know what, no problem. Let me know when you need time off to interview. Let me know if you need a reference. I will help you out. As she was looking around, the CEO was saying to me, hey, you know, she's showing up late. You know, she's not around a lot. What's going on? I said, oh, okay. Yeah, I'll look into that. I didn't want to tell him she was leaving. I said to her, listen, I don't mind that you're doing this. I just need you to be in the office a little more. We can be flexible on when you're in the office, but you got to help me out because you're making me look bad here. She did nothing to help me there. She still would have times where she'd be in the office for 2 hours a day, wouldn't talk to me, wouldn't plan. And that made me look bad. I feel like she's a great engineer, but at the end, boy, that was a bad impression she left me with.
Yeah.
So always when you're leaving a company, whether you quit, get laid off, or get fired, leave on a strong note, leave positive, still do your job. Don't just coast, and leave everyone with a positive impression of you.
Yeah. Especially if you're doing those 2 weeks, say you've already been hired by a new company, you put your 2 weeks in, as he just said, you're going to make a final impression, and you never know when you're going to need that reference again. You're never going to know. Maybe they go to a new company, you want to join them. They're like, you know what? You actually didn't work hard those final 2 weeks. Like, maybe I thought wrong about you the first year that we were together. So those impressions really go a long way. And I always tell the people I work with is, as long as you do what we need you to do when you're interviewing other places, you're hitting your numbers, you're hitting your goals, you're a team player, you're in all the meetings, that's totally fine. That's life. We get it. Business happens. People are going to move different places. But when you start to ruin that integrity of what you're doing here and you're committed to us, that's when the problems start to arise.
Yeah.
I love
Well
that.
said.
Mark, as we kind of round third here, any final last points we haven't brought up today that you think is important for the audience?
If you have never interviewed someone, get that chance at your current company, at your next company. Ask if you can be part of the hiring process, even if you're not senior enough or they don't want you on. Say, can I just sit in and listen in? Because when you are on the other side of the table, you see so much. You only see yourself when you're there and you're in the middle of it. It's like trying to judge yourself when you're up on stage performing. It's hard to judge your performance. But when you're in the audience watching some other performance, you can say, wow, that actor, he's really talented. She does a great job. So you want to be, even if you're just that fly on the wall and not really part of the process, get a chance to see other people as candidates, watch and learn what works, what doesn't, and use that to improve your own interviewing.
I love that. I agree with that. And what I try to do as a hiring manager is, because when people tell me they want to go into management, but it's hard to just jump into management. I want to give people opportunity to practice it and see, do I actually want to manage people and all that goes with it? Or like the day-to-day task is, I try to do an interview process, peer review, where I can have different people on my team interview. And then that way they get to experience, as Mark just said, what it's like to be in the interview, ask those questions. And then two, for me, one, I get to have someone who's doing the job, help them out and answer, is that person a good fit? And two, this person gets on the job experience to learn how to be a manager, how to be an interview process and tasks like that. So I think that's really important what he said as well. And again, I think the other point he said is like, if you don't want to be the interviewer and you just want to sit in, great thing with Zoom nowadays is you can just put your camera off and just listen in. So it makes it much easier to be able to do that nowadays. And then the other thing that I would say that we haven't talked about yet is, and again, this might be more of a sales thing, again, coming from a sales mindset, is when someone sends me a follow-up email after the end of the interview saying, hey, Randy, thank you so much for spending time to interview with me today. After speaking to you, I feel more, more concrete than ever. I'd be great for the oyster. The skills that you talked about are how transferable to me. This is how the impact I can make. Can't wait for next steps. Thank you so much. When people are very, very close in the candidate pool and we don't know where to go to, if someone sends that follow-up email, it's just like a sales thing. Hey, thank you so much for taking the time today to learn more about my product. Love to talk about next steps moving forward. It helps differentiate you. And again, it shows that you're not just thinking about the 30 minutes right there that we interviewed over Zoom in person. When you go home, you get someone's business card. When you spend it at night going through interviewing, following up with the people that you spoke to, it shows that you care about them. It shows you care about their time. It shows you care about the business and you want to be a part of it. So small things like that may sound very silly, but I guarantee you, and I'm telling you from experience, when that has happened, people have won or lost jobs based off of that because it shows they're going the extra effort.
100%. Yeah, those little things really do add up, particularly when you're close. I'll note here again, I have different standards for different people. So for example, if I'm hiring you as an editor, if you have a single typo in your email, okay, that's a problem. Whereas if you're an accountant, oh, you had a typo in the email, fine, we all have accountants, but As an editor, different standard. For sales roles, you absolutely better show up and send that thank you email, because I expect every salesperson I hire to do that. So I will have slightly different standards for different roles, and you can imagine what they might be for different ones, but it never hurts, no matter what role, even if it's a junior role, even a non-sales role, to send that follow-up email.
I agree. And I still send follow-up emails to this day, even if I don't actually, and I'll give you one story, then we'll end it here, is I interviewed for a company. I didn't think they were really a good fit after everything we talked about. And at the end of it, I did my thing. Hey, is there anything that you wish you heard that I didn't talk about? They're like, no, you're good, you're good. And at the end of it, I actually emailed all three of the people I met with on that day and said, hey, y'all, thank you so much. I spent some time this afternoon re-evaluating the conversations, and I actually don't think I'm a good fit for what I'm looking for and for what you want in the business. So thank you so much for your time, but please excuse me from the process. And I hope you have a great day. So one, again, it shows respect to them that, hey, I care about their time and I'm not going to waste more time, their time, if I'm not the right fit. And two, the integrity that I have there in doing that. Because of that, say they end up at a new company, say a new role opens up, I'm a better fit for that. They'll be like, oh, we already like that guy. He interviewed once, he interviewed good. He was very respectful, that wasn't the right fit, versus I kind of dragged it out for them. And now they're like, sour taste in my mouth. So again, always look at it from both sides of the view.
I always teach people jobs are short, careers are long. So it's absolutely acceptable to back out of that job, focus on that long-term relationship.
I love that. Mark, thank you so much for your time today. You've given us so much great advice, examples, real life experience. If people want to dive into the book and they want to learn more from you, how can they do that? And everything that he says will be in the bio of however you're watching or listening.
You can go to my website, thecareertoolkitbook.com. There you can learn more about the book, get in touch with me, follow me on social media. You can also follow my blog posts if you want to get more content. There is a free app to download on Apple and Android, and it's linked from the website. It shares a lot of the great tips from the book. It'll just pop up on your phone once a day. And then there's a whole resources page with other free resources and links to other resources online. All of this at thecareertoolkitbook.com.
Awesome. And again, all this is great information for you all. So if you have any questions, please let us know. If you think this is helpful and you want Mark to come back on, please let us know as well. We can dive into different parts, not just interviews, all parts of the career progression. Mark, thank you so much. This is the Leap of Faith podcast. My name is Randy Silver. Thank you for watching. Please go like and subscribe on all our channels. Mark, please do the sign off after me. So repeat after me. Stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Stay wealthy.
Stay wealthy.
And have a good week, fans.
And have a good week, fans.
Deuces.